Greetings, YouTube. So over on the D&D Usenet group, one of the regular posters, someone going by the name of Spalls Hergensen, posted a checklist of adventures that he was asking if people had ever used. Now, these are unusual adventures, not the run-of-the-mill stuff. So I thought I would run down the list and talk about the ones that I have used. And then I'll post the list in the notes so people can look at it if they want to. And so here we go. The first is the end of the world, survive the apocalypse. I never got to use this. I was ramping up to it, but the campaign fizzled before I had an opportunity to get to the actual apocalypse. I was running a Forgotten Realms campaign, and I had planned on bringing the Dragon Empire from Dragonstar and dropping it on their heads. 2, time travel with optional paradoxes. Yeah, I've done time travel. Also, I've done some small amounts of time travel. I think it was more interdimensional stuff. So they ended up not exactly back where they belonged. So they were kind of slightly off. So they were in a universe that was 99.999% the same as when they left, but it wasn't their original one. Reverse roles, PCs as monsters in a dungeon. Now, I've never done that. I have had a party of adventurers. The player characters were whisked to another dimension because they were the summoned monster of a summoned monster spell. And so they did their mission. When the mission was over, the spell ran out. They were whizzed back to their proper world. While no one died, and I wouldn't have had the deaths count. Future tech / sci-fi elements appear in fantasy worlds, usually crashed alien ships or from alternate realities. I always use these all the time. I love them. In fact, my highest level character has a portrait in the wall, and he's carrying a blaster, a Mark V blaster on his hip. Cowboys, gunfights, cattle rustling, and hangings. I've never used cowboys. I've never used westerns. I didn't realize that until I read this list. I've never been a huge Western fan. Oddly, so just the other day, someone asked me about Western role-playing games and what do I like, and I don't really use them. The last one I think I played was Boot Hill, and that was the original Boot Hill. But I hear some people like Aces and Eights, so I hear that's popular. There are some out there, but I just never was my thing. Post-apocalyptic. No, Dark Sun doesn't count. Now, I have always used post-apocalyptic adventures in a D&D campaign. Whether I'm running a D&D campaign or I'm running a Gamma World campaign, I always have the adventuring routes end up in the other world. So if you're in my Gamma World campaign, eventually you are going to end up in D&D. And if you're in my D&D campaign, eventually you are going to end up in Gamma World. I love mixing and matching these things. And I can remember back when there were conversion rules in the original Dungeon Master's Guide. A zombie apocalypse with swords. I've never done a zombie apocalypse. I have used skeletal apocalypse kind of things twice. One very, very small element, and the other, the characters went to an alternate world that had suffered an apocalypse where all the humanoids had died, and then their skeletons had raised as a new species, the Aleti. So the Aleti woke up fully sentient, or sapient, I should say, in a world that had suffered an apocalypse, and they are the survivors of it. And the player characters were dumped on that world as flesh and blood, and no one in this world had ever encountered flesh and blood mammalian hominids. There were insects, and there were the Thrycreen and the lizard people were still on the planet. They had not suffered the disease. It had only affected the mammals. Obviously magical disease, not an actual disease. Adventure directly based on famous books. I've never done that. I have used movies. For example, I stole an entire set from a James Bond movie and used it. I added to it a little bit, but I just picked the setup, dumped it in my game, and used it, and no one ever noticed. Adventurers plane shift to modern day Earth. I have myself ended up on modern day Earth before. I think I might have used it once in a limited extent. A fairy tale themed theme or style. I've used fairy adventure themes. I've never used a fairy tale theme. I've never actually told a proper fairy tale taken from a historical reference or written of my own. I don't know why I've never done that. Maybe because I think it's almost redundant in some ways, but I don't know. Adventurers kill God or devil and take his or her place. Never done that. We killed a god. We killed Satan in one adventure, Cloud Giant's Castle. We wiped out Lolth, the Spider Queen, once in an adventure, but we didn't replace them. We just wiped them out, or at least banished them from the material plane for X number of years. Adventure has players cast as the criminals who do bad things, as opposed to the players doing that on their own. I've never done, like I said, I only ran one evil alignment campaign adventure, and I didn't like it. And people said, well, one guy said, you weren't playing evil people, you were playing sociopaths. And I wasn't going to argue this any longer with that particular person. I just don't want to do evil alignments, and I don't want characters in a fantasy game being the bad guys. In my fantasy campaigns, I want high fantasy heroes. If I want moral ambiguity, I will run a Supers game in a modern setting, or I will run Gamma World or Mutant Epoch or something like that in a world without alignments, and they can decide what they're going to do with their moral compasses on their own. When it comes to fantasy, I like them up and up heroes. That's just me. So, looking at this list, is there anything that you have done which is unusual? Have you done things outside this adventure selection that might be construed as unusual adventures? And if you have, share it with the room.